I remember the sky, not the way it looked in postcards or VR museums. I mean the real sky, the last time it ever mattered. It was red that day, not from a sunset or the atmosphere scattering light like it used to. No, it was red from them, from Cyrax orbital fires streaking through the clouds like vengeful comets. Cities didn't fall one by one. They collapsed all at once. And I was stupid enough to still be breathing in the middle of it. You'd think when the end came, there'd be chaos, riots, screaming, all that cinematic end-of-the-world drama. But no, it was quiet. I was stationed in what used to be called Sector 12, New Boston, though it hadn't been new for 100 years. Concrete towers, rusting rails, old flags still clinging to broken poles. Just another checkpoint in a war we weren't ready for. The first warning wasn't a siren. It was a silence. You know that eerie stillness, like the world holding its breath? That was the first sign. The birds stopped. The hum of energy lines stopped. Hell, even the air felt wrong, like it had been charged with something ancient and angry. And then the sky bled. We saw it from the perimeter cam, a red slit tearing through the upper atmosphere. Then another, and another, like God had a scalpel and was slicing the heavens open, just to see what bled out. They didn't even bother with subtlety. The Cyrax didn't wage war like we did. No ground invasion, no speeches, no diplomacy. They rained fire. Pure, merciless fire. One second I was sipping recycled coffee. The next, boom. The horizon lit up like a second sun. Towering plumes of fire. The sound didn't even come right away. It caught up to us like a thunderclap, too big for the sky. We ran. Of course we ran. What else do you do when the sky decides to hate you? I remember grabbing my gear out of instinct. Not because I thought it would matter. I wasn't a hero. I was just alive. People screamed around me, some praying, some calling loved ones who wouldn't pick up. The network went dark a few seconds later. When the Cyrax glassed the first zone, I felt it through my boots. The ground didn't rumble. It screamed. Buildings a mile away folded like paper. Roads turned to molten rivers. My squad was gone before I even saw their bodies. I only lived because I fell. Literally. The blast wave knocked me into a collapsed magrail tunnel, where my bones cracked and my helmet split. I lay there, broken, watching the sky collapse in real time. You ever see a moon explode? I did. Luna didn't stand a chance. They hit it just for fun. As a warning, we were watching the evac feeds on our wrist HUDs, civilian ships desperately trying to flee the Earth-Moon orbit. And then bam, a bolt of green plasma carved the moon like a rotten apple. Half of it just vanished. The other half? It bled fire across space like a dying god. All the evac ships? Gone. In that moment, something snapped in me. Fear didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt personal. Hours passed. Days, maybe. Time stopped meaning anything. A scavenger crew found me buried in the rubble. Mercs in a black market dropship called the Widow's Wake. They weren't military, but they pulled me out anyway. Said I was the only warm body left in that quadrant. Said I had the look in my eyes, the kind that meant I wasn't ready to die just yet. They didn't ask for payment, just patched me up, slapped on a stim pack, and got me aboard before the next orbital burst lit the skyline. From the air, Earth didn't look like Earth anymore. It looked like a war crime. You could see the cratered continents, the boiling oceans. The Cyrax weren't just exterminating us. They were erasing us. Cities had been replaced by glowing scars. The atmosphere shimmered with radiation clouds and plasma trails. Orbit was filled with burning satellites, drifting corpses, and the bones of our arrogance. We watched it all from the viewport as we broke Atmo, and nobody spoke, not a word, because there are some things you can't wrap your mouth around. Some griefs are too big to scream. The Widow's Wake was a smuggler's dream. Fast, dirty, unregistered. She slipped through Cyrax patrol zones like a rat through sewer grates. We ran silent for 6 days. No comms, no beacons, just cold drift and dead hopes. The med bay smelled like blood and old metal. I lay there half-conscious, watching flickers of our escape on a cracked screen. Then the Cyrax sent the message. Not a broadcast, not a declaration, just one phrase, carved into the side of Earth's last orbital station. Order restored. Chaos extinguished. That was their reason. That's why they burned our cities, our books, our oceans, our history. Because we were chaos. Too unpredictable, too emotional, too fragile and stubborn to fit into their neat little empire of control. They didn't come to conquer us. They came to cleanse us. And you know what? Maybe they were right. Because everything they hated about us, our chaos, our madness, our refusal to kneel, that's the part that survived. We drifted to Ravana Station 2 weeks later. A rogue colony hiding in the shadow of a neutron star. Dark, isolated, forgotten by everyone except the desperate. They didn't ask where we came from. They didn't care. They just patched the ship, handed out ration packs, and told us to keep our heads down. But there were others like me there. Survivors. Broken. Burning. You could see it in their eyes. That same fire. That same wound. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were orphans of a murdered world. Ghosts of a war we never had a chance to win. And me? I swore something that night. Not a prayer. Not a mission. Just a promise, whispered through bloodied teeth as I stared at the stars that watched us die. You burned my world. Now watch what crawls out of the ashes. End of Chapter 1. Would you like me to begin Chapter 2 next? Reborn in Fire, where Cole wakes up in Ravana Station, rebuilt with cybernetic tech and introduced to Iron Company? Or any edits to the voice or tone first? You said, rewrite Chapter 2 to approximately 1,500 to 1,700 word with a natural human tone, like Netflix narrator explaining it in a flowy, emotional way. No robotic or textbook phrases. Every line should connect like storytelling. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's Chapter 2. Reborn in Fire, rewritten in a cinematic, emotional, human tone like a Netflix narrator telling you a story meant to scar and inspire. Chapter 2. Reborn in Fire. Some people wake up in a hospital. I woke up in a scrapyard full of ghosts, and I was one of them. You ever wake up and not recognize your own breath? That slow inhale through lungs that don't burn right. The exhale that sounds too clean, like air passing through something mechanical instead of meat and bone. That was me. First breath back from the dead. I opened my eyes to a flickering ceiling light, buzzing like it hated being alive too. The air stank of ozone, sterilizer, and something behind it, something metallic, burnt, old. A scent you learn to associate with war zones and backroom clinics. I tried to move. Big mistake. My right arm didn't respond. Not in the way it used to. I heard a faint click, then a whir, and finally a smooth, seamless clank. That's when I noticed my arm wasn't mine anymore. Steel. Jet black. Matte plating from elbow to fingertips, with fiber cable veins twitching under the surface. Panic came fast, but pain came faster. I sat up like a corpse yanked by puppet strings, and the agony slammed through me like a train. My spine lit up. My ribs screamed. My skull felt like it had a heartbeat. I hit the floor hard, breathing like a drowning man. That's when she walked in. She was tall, lean, burnt copper skin, hair shaved close to the scalp, cybernetic eye glowing a faint amber. Military stance, feet shoulder-width apart, arms crossed like she was always one sentence away from killing someone. Her name was Commander Lyra Voss, but that came later. Right now, she just looked at me like I was a broken tool someone forgot to throw away. You're lucky, she said, voice smooth like it had been ground down by experience. Another hour in that wreck, and we'd be scraping you off a bulkhead with a mop. I croaked out a question, something about who she was, where I was. She didn't answer, just walked over, crouched, and tapped a knuckle against my metal arm. This, she said, this is your second chance. They called it Ravana Station, a relic of the old days, half pirate outpost, half junkyard, hidden in the orbit of a dead neutron star. No light, no warmth, just gravity and ghosts. No governments, no rules. Just people too angry to die and too stubborn to run. Perfect place for the last of us. Voss walked me through the corridors after I could stand. Pipes lined the walls like veins. Every bulkhead hissed when you passed. The lights didn't hum, they growled. I saw welders patching hulls with bare hands, mercs trading guns for painkillers, and kids scavenging machine guts like treasure. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. And real was something Earth didn't have anymore. I spent the next 2 weeks in rehab. Not physical therapy, not the soft glove hospital kind. This was combat integration. They didn't ask if I was ready. They asked if I could shoot. Turns out, the Cyrex tech they pulled out of my neck during the evac, it wasn't just embedded, it was interfacing. Whatever it was doing inside me, it wasn't trying to kill me. It was learning, copying, evolving. They gave me a choice. Walk away, or join something that didn't officially exist. Iron Company. You won't find Iron Company in any database. There's no logo, no uniform, no anthem, just scars. We were Earth's leftover knives. People too broken for the Navy, too angry for peace, too dangerous to waste. They called us Hellforged. Half flesh, half machine, all fury. I met the team on day 14. They didn't smile, didn't offer handshakes, just gave nods, eye scans, and one glance at the Cyrex metal still grafted to my spine. I guess I passed. There was Knox, the heavy gunner. 7 feet tall in exo armor, voice like gravel, laughter like thunder. Used to be a prison enforcer. Now he cracked Cyrex skulls for therapy. Kai, the infiltration op, fast, quiet, always 2 steps ahead of the shadows. She was born in the ruins of Jakarta, raised by scavengers, and could hack a dreadnought blindfolded. And then there was Dre, our medic engineer. He'd lost both legs and one eye, but kept his humor sharp and his rage sharper. We didn't talk much, but we understood each other. People like us didn't need words, just targets. My first test came sooner than expected. Commander Voss called us into the hangar. 4 of us, a briefing table, a hollow projection of a Cyrex outpost built inside a dead comet. This, she said, is called her mining relay, communications node, and probably a lab for whatever new bioweapon they're cooking up next. She looked at me then, direct, unflinching. You want to stay? You prove you're not just spare parts with a grudge. You drop with them. You come back walking. That was the deal. The drop was cold, violent, beautiful in a terrifying way. We exited the dropship in dead silence. No radio chatter, just synced pulses on the HUD, counting down to impact. I remember gripping the handrails inside that metal coffin, heart pounding like war drums. And then boom, surface contact. The Cyrex outpost wasn't designed for visitors. Organic metal spires rose from the comet like bone grown wrong. Everything pulsed, breathed. Their tech wasn't built. It was grown. As soon as we breached the airlock, they came for us. First blood wasn't mine. It was Kai's. One clean shot between the eyes of a Cyrex sentry. No warning, no mercy. Then all hell broke loose. Screams echoed down the tunnels, not human, not machine. Something worse. The walls shifted as we moved, like the outpost knew we were inside it. Dre triggered the seismic charges. Nox opened fire with a rotary cannon big enough to knock planets off axis. And me? I moved like I'd done this 100 times. My arm, my new one, it didn't just follow commands. It anticipated them. The Cyrex metal in me was responding. It reacted before I did, mapping enemies through walls, triggering reflexes I hadn't earned. I fought with instinct sharpened into steel, and I loved it. Then came the turning point. Down in the core chamber, we found something worse than expected. A hive talker, Cyrex command cast, fully integrated, built like a goddamn nightmare, 6 limbs, armor like obsidian, and a face that wasn't a face, just light and hate. We were outgunned, outmatched, and in way too deep. But that thing, it looked at me, not at my squad, not at the explosives, at me, and it spoke, not with sound, but through me. My HUD flickered. My implants buzzed. I heard its voice in the base of my skull. Aberrant. Unclean. You are not what you were. I don't know what came over me. I charged. Shot at point blank. Emptied a mag into its skull and screamed until I felt my lungs tear. And when it fell, it bled. Real blood and molten code. We finished the mission. Barely. Back on Ravana Station, Voss looked at me different. Not with pride. With curiosity. Concern, maybe. You interfaced with it, she said. I killed it, I replied. She nodded once. Same thing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat alone in the dark, staring at my reflection in a cracked mirror. I didn't recognize the man anymore. Not just because of the metal, but because of the look in his eyes. I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I was ready. They burned my world and called it peace. Now I had their strength in my veins, their steel in my fists, and something they could never program. Human rage. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was the beginning. There's no glory in the grind. Just blood, steel, and the sound of bones breaking under boots. If you're lucky, you walk out. If you're not, you feed the floor. Some wars are fought with strategy, tactics, carefully planned moves across star maps and satellite grids. This wasn't one of those wars. This was a meat grinder, and we were the meat. The mission was simple on paper. Drop into Facility Theta 9, deep in the Cyrex-controlled belt of Naxos Prime. Blow the relay. Get out. Standard smash and burn. The kind of op they give to people they don't mind losing. We were in the hangar, just before the drop. Everyone checking gear, loading mags, syncing neural HUDs. The air was thick with that pre-mission tension. Not fear. Something worse. Expectation. We all knew the stories about Theta 9. The place, 8 units alive, 9 squads in, 0 out. No survivors. Not even remains. Just flatlines on the feed and a sea of static. Like the Cyrex were wiping souls, not just bodies. I was locking down my harness when Kai leaned over and muttered, I hear they grow the walls in there. Feed and blood to keep the structure alive. Dre snorted. That's not blood. That's liquefied failure. Nox just smiled. Doesn't matter what it's made of, it'll burn. Commander Voss didn't give us a speech. She never did. She looked at us, just 5 sets of eyes, and said one thing. You get in, you do the job, you don't die. If you can't manage all three, prioritize the first two. Then the lights went red. The drop bay opened, and we fell into hell. The Cyrex call them gray tracks. These dropships don't land. They stab, pierce atmosphere at speeds your bones shouldn't survive, slam through orbital debris, and impale themselves into the target like spears thrown by vengeful gods. Inside, it was chaos. Metal groaned. Systems flickered. Heat scorched the seams. You could feel the gravity tear at your skin as we punched through the upper atmosphere. My vision blurred. Teeth rattled. My cybernetics screamed in my bones like angry ghosts. And then, impact. We hit the deck of Theta 9 so hard. I felt my soul disconnect for a second. Then my boots found steel, and the lights came on. The first thing I noticed? Silence. Not dead silence. No. Wrong silence. Like something was listening, waiting. The walls didn't look like walls. They pulsed, flesh-woven with alloy, some sick crossbreed of tech and tissue. Kai tapped a section with her blade. It twitched. She looked at me and said, "Told you." Nox took point. We moved in tight formation, weapons up, sensors screaming interference. Every corridor felt like a throat we were crawling deeper into. And the further we went, the warmer it got. The ambush hit at the first junction. A wall blinked. Yeah, blinked. And from it erupted 3 Cyrex drones. Not the usual grunts. These were taller, leaner, sharper. Bone blades for arms. No eyes. Just echolocators mounted in the chest. Dre was the first to fire. 2 pulses, center mass. The first one staggered, but didn't fall. Then Nox stepped up and reduced it to chunks with a cannon blast that echoed like Judgment Day. I got my first kill 2 seconds later, caught the second one mid-leap, tore through it with a forearm blade that hummed with a hunger I didn't recognize. The third? That one tried to run. Kai didn't let it. We kept moving. No rest. No room for it. Every meter we advanced, the structure got stranger, more organic, more alive. I watched the walls shift behind us, closing the way we came, like the station was sealing us inside, digesting us. That's when we found the first human remains, or what was left of them. Armor fragments, a helmet half melted into the floor, and a hand, just a hand, reaching out of the wall, fingers locked in a silent scream. Nox knelt beside it, brushed the dust off the name tag embedded in the wrist plate. Unit Echo 9, he murmured. They vanished 6 weeks ago. I looked at the hand. Guess that answers that. We moved faster after that. The relay chamber was down 3 more levels. Access was through a vertical shaft, like an elevator, except the Cyrex didn't build elevators, just pits. You either climbed or you fell. We climbed. Halfway down, alarms triggered. The walls screamed, literally screamed. High-pitched screeches like steel being tortured. Then came the swarm. Drones, crawlers, organic bots, things without names or shapes that made sense. They came pouring down the shaft like an avalanche of blades and teeth. No time to think, just fight. Nox anchored us, mowing them down with controlled bursts. Kai moved like smoke, slicing throats and disappearing before blood could hit the floor. Dre lit the shaft with fire grenades that turned the air into a furnace. Me? I don't remember thinking. I just moved. The tech in my spine kicked in. Time slowed. Reaction sharpened. I was everywhere and nowhere, striking faster than I should have been able to. The Cyrex metal in my body, it wasn't fighting me. It was hunting with me. We lost Dre at the bottom. One of the crawlers exploded. Acid-based suicide bomb. Took half the corridor and Dre's legs with it. He screamed once, then laughed. I told you it wasn't blood. That was his last joke. Kai dragged me away before I could reach him. He died cursing us out. Wouldn't have had it any other way. We reached the relay chamber on fumes. It was huge, a cathedral of horror. Columns of glowing tech pulp rose to a ceiling lined with Cyrex skulls. The relay core pulsed at the center, beating like a heart. And guarding it, one of the Cyrex warden-class units, 9 feet tall, for arms, each tipped with something that shouldn't be weaponized. Its voice filled the room, not sound, but pressure. Aberrant detected. Infection spreading. It saw me. Again, just like before. I charged it. I don't remember the details. Just flashes. Steel meeting bone. Claws raking across my chest plate. The sound of my breath turning into growls. I fought like something wild. Something not quite human anymore. It died with my blade buried in its throat. And for the first time, I heard it beg. Not with words, but with fear. We planted the charges. Set the timer. Ran like hell. Facility Theta. 9 collapsed behind us, screaming like a living thing finally put out of its misery. Back in orbit, from the evac ship, we watched the structure implode. Waves of Cyrex biomatter disintegrating in a bloom of blue fire. Voss met us on the hangar deck. Only 3 of us walked off that ship. She looked at me for a long time. You saw it again, didn't you? I nodded. She didn't say anything else, just turned and walked away. Later that night, I sat in the debrief chamber, staring at my hands. One metal, one flesh, and both trembling. Kai came in, sat beside me, quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You know they're afraid of you, right? The Cyrex." "No," she said. "Us." I didn't respond, because she was right. I could feel it growing inside me. This wasn't just war anymore. This was evolution, and I was the edge of the blade. There comes a point in war where you stop asking who the bad guys are, because by then, the mirror's already cracked. And what's looking back isn't human anymore. The debrief room was too quiet. One of those silences that felt thick, heavy, like it knew what you did and was waiting for you to confess. The lights flickered low. My armor was still crusted with Cyrex blood, or whatever passed for it. Burnt black, oily, with a copper tang that clung to the air like guilt. I hadn't even taken the chest plate off. Could still feel it pressing into the bruise on my ribs like a reminder. You survived, but not untouched. I sat alone for a while. No words, no orders, just the soft hiss of ventilation and the hum of Ravana Station vibrating beneath my boots. I kept staring at my hands. One flesh, one metal, both soaked in something I couldn't wash off. Voss came in without a sound, like a ghost that remembered it used to be a soldier. She didn't sit, just stood in the shadows by the door, arms crossed, eyes scanning me like I was a bomb that hadn't decided what kind of explosion it wanted to be. "You did what 9 squads couldn't," she finally said. I didn't answer. She didn't expect me to. Theta. 9 was a turning point, not just for the war, for you. Still, I didn't look up, not because I was ashamed, but because I wasn't. That was the part that scared me. She took a step closer, her boots clicking against the steel floor like punctuation marks. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to be honest." I finally looked up. Her face was hard, not angry, just resolved. "How much of that fight," she asked, "was you? And how much was whatever's inside you now?" The question hit harder than I expected, like she'd peeled back a bandage I'd been pretending wasn't there. I wanted to say it was all me, that I fought like I trained, like the soldier I used to be. But the truth was, I didn't fight like myself. I fought like something else, something faster, sharper, more precise and less human. Something that didn't just react to danger. It anticipated it. I thought about lying, but she would have seen through it. "I don't know," I said quietly. I felt it again, same as Calder. It sees me, reacts to me, like I'm not just carrying its tech, like I am the tech now. Voss nodded slowly, not surprised, not afraid, but not comforted either. "There's a reason the Cyrex keep calling you aberrant," she said. "To them, you're not just a soldier. You're a variable they can't control, an infection in their system." I gave a bitter half laugh. "Yeah, well, I'm starting to feel like one." The next day, she called the team in. Me, Kai, Knox. That was all who was left. The ops room smelled like old smoke and new regrets. The holomap showed Cyrex clusters along the Vantar belt, but no one looked at it. We weren't here to talk strategy. We were here to face the part no one liked saying out loud. We were changing, and not just physically. Kai sat with her arms wrapped around herself, like she was holding something in. Her skin was pale, even for her, and her cybernetic implants pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. Something about her felt thinner, like the space between her and the void had narrowed. Knox sat across from her, his massive frame hunched over, hands clasped like he was praying to gods he didn't believe in. And me? I just listened. Voss stepped forward. "We've crossed the threshold," she said. "The missions we take now, they're not about territory or kills. They're about sending a message." She tapped the relay node on the map. It pulsed red. "This one's next. The Cyrex are watching. They know what we did at Theta. They're recalibrating, retaliating." Kai finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "They'll be ready for us." Voss didn't flinch. "Then we'll be worse." Silence again. Heavy, suffocating. Then Knox grunted. "What are we becoming, Commander?" She looked at him, at all of us, and said exactly what they feared. That night, I stood alone at the edge of Ravenous observation deck, staring into the black ocean of space, trying to find some kind of anchor. There wasn't one, just stars, distant, indifferent. I touched the scar behind my ear where the Cyrex neural shard had been grafted during my escape. I could still feel it humming when I was quiet enough, like it was dreaming. or waiting. I thought of Dre, his laugh, the way he died cursing at death like it owed him money. I thought of all the others who didn't make it, and I thought of what Voss said. Exactly what they feared. The next mission was smaller. A recon op near the border zone. Simple. Get in, extract a data node, get out. We dropped with a two-man crew, me and Kai. But simple missions are the ones that cut deepest. The planet was quiet. Too quiet. We moved through dense growth plants that glowed under a broken moon. No wind, no life, just ruins and shadows. The facility was abandoned. At least, that's how it looked. Until we reached the core chamber and saw the bodies. Dozens of them. Human. Torn apart. Not by drones. By something bigger. Something angrier. And standing in the center was a mirror of me. It wasn't perfect. Its movements were wrong. Its posture too stiff. But the face? Mine. Or at least, what mine used to be. Kai froze beside me, her rifle trembling. What the hell is that? She whispered. The thing cocked its head and smiled. Hello, aberrant. It said. We've been watching. It wasn't a trap. It was a test. And I failed. I charged it without thinking. Rage blurred my vision. It fought back like it had been studying me, mirroring me, learning. But it didn't have my fury, my pain, my history. It didn't carry Earth's ashes in its lungs. I ripped its head off with my bare hands. And when I looked down at what I'd done, I saw my own reflection staring back, twitching, dying, smiling. Back on the ship, Kai didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, they're not just evolving tech, they're evolving us. And I knew then, this wasn't about winning a war. It was about who we became while trying. We landed back at Ravana to another briefing, another target, another plan. But I couldn't shake what I'd seen, not because it looked like me, but because for a moment, I understood it. It wasn't just mimicking. It wanted to be me, to feel what I felt, to rage how I raged, to wear my pain like armor. Because that, not logic, not strategy, is what kept me alive. And maybe the scariest part? I wasn't sure I'd ever stop feeding it. I sat in my bunk that night, stripped down, hands trembling, looked in the mirror again. Only this time, I didn't flinch. We are the monsters now. But we're the kind of monsters they should have never let survive. The kind that remembers. The kind that burns back. There are places in this galaxy that don't belong to the living. Places where sound gets swallowed and even light is afraid to look too long. We dropped into one of those places, and it looked back. You learn something, being in space long enough. Silence isn't peaceful. It's ancient, heavy, a predator in the dark. The deeper you go, the worse it gets. Beyond the trade lanes, beyond the colonies, beyond where anyone sane would drift. That's where we went. Deep black, no stars, no heat, just emptiness so pure it feels like falling forever. And in the middle of all that, a Cyrex dreadnought, dead. Or at least, that's what they told us. The briefing was short, almost dismissive. Just a fuzzy hologram of a vessel the size of a continent, floating in a decay orbit around a rogue planet. No designation, no call sign, no history. Just a single word stamped in bold across the screen. Excommunicated. That should have been the first red flag. Even the Cyrex don't talk about their dead ships. They erase them, burn the names, vaporize the wrecks. But this one was left to drift. And we were being sent aboard it. I remember sitting in the launch bay, gearing up, checking my pulse rifle for the 5th time even though I knew it was fine. Kai was quiet, as usual, focused. Her blade was already coated in null sealant. The kind you use when you expect your target to bleed backwards. Knox was sharpening a knife the size of my forearm. It wasn't standard issue. Nothing he carried was. He looked like a storm wearing armor. Voss stood in front of us like a statue carved out of war and whiskey. No recon, she said. No backup. No recovery. She let that sink in. We go in quiet. We don't get clever. We pull the data core and get out. If the ship talks to you, don't listen. If it shows you faces, don't follow. She looked straight at me when she said that last part. The Widow's Wake docked with the dreadnought like a scavenger nuzzling the corpse of a god. The airlock hissed, metal groaned, and the scent hit us first. Burnt copper, mold, something deeper, not just decay. Memory. The inside was wrong, not in the usual Cyrex way. We'd seen their biotech ships before. Organic walls, breathing vents, corridors that twitch when you walk too close. But this ship didn't move. It was still, like it had forgotten how. The lights flickered in slow pulses. Not enough to guide, just enough to haunt. We split into 2 teams. Me and Kai went left, toward what used to be the command spire. Knox and Voss went down into the reactor spine. My HUD was glitching the moment we stepped inside. Every time I turned a corner, it lagged behind, like it wasn't sure where I was. My vitals kept spiking and dropping at random. My gun's targeting reticle refused to stay centered. I don't like this, Kai whispered through the comms. I don't think we're supposed to, I said. We passed rooms with doors half open, half fused. Inside, bones, Cyrex, human, and others, not killed, folded, like whatever hit them hadn't used weapons, just ideas. Thoughts sharp enough to slice bone. One hallway had walls made entirely of helmets. Earth helmets, UNMC, Colonial Rangers, even old-gen miner suits from the first Mars waves, all arranged in perfect lines, like trophies, or a prayer. I started hearing things in the walls. Faint static, whispers I couldn't trace, not words. More like breathing on the back of your neck when you know you're alone. Every so often, the metal would creak, not from pressure, but from memory, like the ship was remembering being alive. Then we found the first console, still powered, flickering blue-green, pulsing like a heartbeat. Kai went to work pulling the data. She cursed softly, encrypted in layers. Organic firewalls. How long? Depends how long it takes the ship to notice. That's when the lights behind us blinked out, and I saw my reflection in the dark. But it wasn't me. It was Earth, the old me, wearing my old armor, the one I wore during the fall. But the face was wrong, calm, smiling. It spoke without moving its mouth. Do you remember how it felt? When the oceans boiled and the sky bled. Do you miss it? I blinked, and it was gone. Kai hadn't seen it. Or maybe she had her own ghosts. Meanwhile, in the reactor spine, Knox and Voss had found something worse. They broke radio silence halfway through our search. Command, Knox said, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it. We found the crew. I think. Copy, I replied. Cyrex. A pause. No, another pause. They're us. We regrouped in the atrium just below the Dreadnought's core. It looked like a cathedral. Vaulted ceilings, bone chandeliers, walls carved in spirals of language we couldn't read. But that still hurt to look at. Voss was pacing. Knox had blood on his boots. What did you see? I asked. They weren't bodies, he muttered. They were shells. Us. Grown from something. Skin was ours. Eyes weren't. Clones. Worse, Voss said. Replicas. Emotionless. Frozen in time. She didn't need to explain what that meant. The Cyrex weren't just studying us. They were trying to wear us. That's when the ship spoke. Not through speakers. Not even sound. It spoke through me. My spine lit up. My vision blurred. Every implant in my body surged like it had been plugged into a god. Then, a voice. Gentle. Cold. Almost kind. You are the broken fragment. The virus we could not purge. But now you see. There is no war. Only inheritance. I dropped to my knees, screaming without breath. Kai and Knox tried to help. Couldn't touch me. The Dreadnought didn't want them. It wanted me. I saw everything. Memories that weren't mine. Images of Earth, from orbit. The moment it burned, the data absorbed. I saw myself splintering, not dying, dividing. The Cyrex hadn't just let me live after the fall. They'd marked me, seeded me, watched me, and whatever was growing inside me. It wasn't just adapting. It was remembering. I came to with blood in my mouth and static in my skull. Voss was yelling. Kai was dragging me up. We ran. No questions. No orders. Just flight. Back aboard the Wake. The data was locked down. Scrubbed. Air-gapped. Voss stood at the airlock as the ship pulled away. Her arms crossed. Jaw clenched. We're not supposed to be alive, she said. And that ship wasn't supposed to be found. What was it? I asked. She didn't answer. Just looked at me. That same way she always did. Like I was something ticking quietly in her war machine. Later, I sat alone in the med-bay, hooked up to scans, reading the diagnostics. Every readout was wrong. My neural patterns didn't match anything human anymore. My blood carried microconstructs the system couldn't classify. My reflexes were off-chart. I wasn't dying. I was shifting. And in the reflection of the med-bay glass, I saw it again. Not a monster. Not a soldier. Something between. Something the Cyrex built and lost control of. Something that remembered Earth's fire and wasn't afraid to spread it. At some point, they stop calling you a soldier. They start calling you a variable, a liability, a threat. And that's when you realize you're not just fighting the enemy anymore. You're fighting what's growing inside you. It started with my hands. Twitches, little spasms at first, barely noticeable. But then the fingers started moving on their own, like they were rehearsing something I hadn't taught them. Some pattern or code I couldn't remember learning. By the third day back from the Dreadnought, I stopped trying to pretend it was stress. I knew the signs, knew what trauma felt like. This wasn't that. This was change. Quiet, relentless, and coming from inside. I didn't tell the others. Not yet. Kai already looked at me differently. Not scared, just measured, like she was recalculating who I was and what I might become. Knox stayed loyal, but he didn't joke as much anymore. Didn't slap my shoulder like he used to. He kept one eye on me when he thought I wasn't looking. Voss? She didn't ask questions. She was watching too. On day 5, I passed out in the mess hall. One second I was eating protein paste that barely qualified as food. The next, I was on the floor, twitching, screaming, not from pain, from input. My implants lit up like a supernova. Every nerve was a circuit board sparking at once. I saw visions again. Not memories, not dreams. Blueprints, designs. Cyrex interface architecture layered over my own bones. I could feel the logic flowing, recursive, beautiful, merciless. When I woke up, I was in medical lockdown, and Voss was standing at the foot of the bed, arms folded, eyes stone cold. She didn't yell, didn't threaten. That wasn't her style. She just said, "You crossed a line, Cole, and we're all standing on the edge with you." I tried to speak, but my throat felt raw. "I didn't choose this," I rasped. "I know," she said, "but it doesn't change what you are now." She tapped the glass. Behind it, I saw the medical readings, neural distortion spikes, unknown protein markers, foreign cognitive loops, Cyrex code. Inside me, "They're calling it the aberrant protocol," she said. "You're not infected. You're integrating." She paused, then added softly, "We don't know what that means yet, but we both did." Later, in the war room, the topic was no longer me as a soldier. It was me as a variable. Kai sat in silence, arms crossed, chewing the inside of her cheek like it might give her answers. Knox paced in circles like a caged animal. Voss dropped the hammer. If he breaks containment, there is no fallback, no sedatives, no tranquilizers. The neural shard adapts too fast. Our only failsafe is full force termination. She didn't flinch when she said it. Neither did I, because in that moment, I understood. They weren't planning for me to survive this. They were planning for when I didn't. Then the alarm sounded. A soft, rhythmic pulse, not panic screech, not sirens. Just a chime that meant something is here, and it shouldn't be. We rushed to the observation bay, and there it was. A Cyrex vessel, not attacking, just hovering outside the station like a ghost ship waiting for its cue. No weapons active, no signals, just watching. And then a transmission came through, but not to comms, to me. I staggered, felt it crawl down my spine. Their language isn't sound, it's sensation, thought. You feel their words, like static turning into fire inside your skull. Aberrant, you are not enemy, you are unfinished. My mouth moved, but the words weren't mine. I am not yours. The lights flickered, the station shuddered. Voss stepped toward me, gun unholstered, but low. "What are they saying?" she asked. "They want me," I said, voice raw. "Not to kill, too complete." Kai swore under her breath. Knox said what none of us wanted to. "They think he's one of them." We voted, not officially, not with raised hands or signatures, but in looks. Kai said it with a stare. She wasn't sure I'd make it back if we let this continue. Knox said it with silence. He'd follow me into hell, but he needed to know it wouldn't be for nothing. Voss said it by walking out of the room. The decision wasn't hers anymore. It was mine, and so I made it. I sent the reply myself, not through any terminal, not through words, through thought. I let the Cyrex signal in, let it pulse through the edges of my mind like a wire being threaded through old scars. I opened the door they'd been knocking on, and in return, they gave coordinates, a location in the debris veil, one of their oldest hive cores, abandoned, silent, but not dead. "Come," they said, "and remember what you are." Voss wasn't happy. She slammed the file down in front of me. "You're walking into a trap." "Probably," I said. "You think you can control this thing. You can't. You're bleeding into something you don't understand." "I don't need to understand it," I said. "I just need to end it." She stared at me long and hard. Then she handed me a mission pack. One last ride. The debris veil is a graveyard of wars that ended before humans left Earth's atmosphere. Dead satellites, broken alien hulls, black holes stitched into asteroids. It's a place full of secrets too dangerous to bury and too terrifying to keep. And there, among it all, the hive, an ancient Cyrex structure older than the code they use now. Cracked, faded, sick, like something they tried to forget. The perfect place for answers no one wants. We dropped with a small team, just me, Kai, Knox, and 2 AI drones. Voss didn't come. She stayed behind, in case we didn't come back. Or worse, in case I did. The hive opened for us. Not with force, not with hacking. It recognized me. Corridors lit up as I passed. Walls softened. Barriers dissolved. It wasn't greeting me like an enemy. It was welcoming me home. Inside the core, it showed me everything. not as images, as memories. Earth's fall, my death, my resurrection. The shard they embedded in me wasn't just tech. It was seated memory. They weren't trying to control me. They were trying to copy me. Human fury, defiance, chaos. They'd never been able to replicate it until I bled on their steel and survived. They didn't want me destroyed. They wanted me to lead, to become something between them and us. A bridge, a weapon, a king. I almost said yes, but then I remembered Earth, the screams, the fire, the dust in my mouth as the sky fell. And I knew, whatever I become, it wasn't theirs to shape. It was mine. I activated the failsafe, triggered the hive's collapse from the inside. As the walls screamed and the floor shook, I ran. Nox and Kai followed. We reached the evac craft just as the whole thing folded in on itself, a grave swallowing its own ghosts. Back aboard Ravana, Voss stood waiting at the airlock. "You burn it down?" she asked. I nodded. Every last circuit. She looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, "You came back. Did you think I wouldn't? I hoped you wouldn't have to choose." I looked down at my hands again. One metal, one flesh, and somewhere in between, a war still burning. I'm not human anymore. Not really, but I'm not theirs either. I'm what's left. The spark they couldn't steal. The fire they couldn't replicate. I'm the one who remembers the screams and answers them with steel. There are wars you fight with guns. And then there are the ones that start with a glance across the table. The kind that turn friends into strangers, and soldiers into something else entirely. You can win 100 battles out there in the black. You can burn a Cyrex hive to the ground, crawl out smoking and scarred, and still walk away with your boots on. But none of that prepares you for the moment your own team looks at you like they're not sure if they're supposed to salute you or shoot you. That moment came 2 days after we destroyed the hive, and it started, like so many endings do, with silence. The Iron Company wasn't a unit anymore. It was a pressure cooker. I could feel it in the way Kai didn't meet my eyes during briefings, the way Nox's grip on his combat knife tightened whenever I spoke, the way the others, the techs, the green recruits, even Voss, gave me space like I was radioactive. Maybe I was. After all, I'd walked into a Cyrex hive, heard their offer, tasted their mind, and come back different. That difference scared them. Hell, it scared me, but I was still breathing, still fighting, still me, as far as I could tell. Only problem? No one else was so sure anymore. It came to a head in the mess hall. Late cycle, shift change. Just me, Kai, and Nox sitting at opposite ends of the table, pretending we weren't watching each other. I picked at my ration bar, synthetic beef with the texture of regret. Nox just stared at his cup. Kai was sharpening a blade that didn't need sharpening. Finally, she broke the silence. "You're hiding something." No accusation, just a fact laid bare. I looked up. I'm not hiding. I'm processing. That's not what I meant. Her eyes met mine. Calm, cold. "You didn't tell us what they showed you." "Not all of it." Nox looked between us, then said, "They offered you something, didn't they?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I was lying, because I wasn't sure they wanted the truth. "They offered me leadership," I said slowly. "Not chains, not mind control. They wanted me to be the missing link." Nox let out a dry laugh. "Between us and them." I nodded. "Yeah, the hybrid, the evolution." Kai slammed her blade into the table so hard it quivered. "And you considered it." It wasn't a question. I didn't flinch. "I burned that hive to ash. You were there." She leaned forward, eyes sharp. "But before you did, you listened." Silence again, like a storm about to break. "I'm still human," I said, and immediately hated how hollow it sounded. Kai shook her head. "No, you're not. Not anymore. You're something else." Nox looked away, jaw clenched. I felt something cold settle in my gut, because she wasn't wrong, and I didn't have an answer for it. Later, Voss called me into the command room. Just me. No squad. No backup. She didn't stand behind the table this time. She sat, looked tired. That scared me more than any battlefield ever had. "There's a vote coming," she said. I frowned. "A vote? About your status? Whether to keep you active command or quarantine you?" I laughed once. Low, bitter. "They think I'm infected. They think you're unstable, that you're a risk. And what do you think?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I think you're both weapon and wildfire. And I don't know which side you're going to burn." That night, I found Nox in the armory. He was checking rounds, cleaning a plasma cannon that didn't need cleaning. His usual way of thinking through something he didn't want to say out loud. "You came here to kill me?" I asked, half joking. He didn't laugh, just set the cannon down and said, "If it came down to it, would you kill you?" That landed harder than I expected. "I tried," I said. "Would you win?" I didn't have an answer. The vote happened the next day, not in a courtroom, not with speeches. Just a closed door and a data slate. 12 signatures, 6 options, 3 outcomes. Quarantine, rescind command, reinforce loyalty. And all it took was one tiebreaker to shift the whole war inside the station. Voss didn't cast her vote immediately. She waited. She watched me. And then she made her choice. The door opened. The room cleared. She looked at me and said, "They chose to keep you in the fight." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "But it's not a blank check," she added. "You're on leash now. One wrong move." "I know," I said. "You won't hesitate." She nodded. "You're the most dangerous thing on this station, Cole. Not because of what you are." She paused. "But because you still think you're human." The next stop came sooner than expected. A rogue signal in a decommissioned terraformer on Revel 7. Human architecture laced with Cyrex interference. A perfect trap. We were sent in with a stripped crew. Just me, Kai, and 2 rookies who barely knew which end of the gun to point. Knox stayed behind. Didn't say why. Didn't need to. Revel 7 was dead, half buried in red sand. The terraformer a hollow husk echoing with static. The signal pulsed from deep within the machine's heart. I led the way. Kai didn't speak. Not once. Not even to the rookies. We found the source 5 levels down. A Cyrex core old, cracked, but alive, still feeding, still thinking. It turned on the moment I got close and said one word through my teeth. "Brother." Kai raised her rifle. I didn't stop her. I let her pull the trigger, let the core explode in silence, and didn't look back. We didn't talk on the way up. Back aboard the shuttle, the rookies were quiet, eyes wide, hearts racing. Kai sat across from me. She finally broke the silence. "I should have killed you down there. I wouldn't have stopped you." "Then why didn't I?" I met her gaze. "Because you still believe I might be on our side." She didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either. Back on Ravana, I watched my reflection again. Not just to see what had changed, but to see what hadn't. I still mine. Scars still real. But underneath it all, a pulse. A rhythm that didn't belong to Earth anymore. And a question rising like pressure in my chest. What happens when the monster you fear is the one keeping you alive? There comes a moment when orders stop sounding like commands and start feeling like eulogies. When you're not sure if the mission is about survival or sacrifice. The briefing was short, too short, the kind that doesn't explain much, just points you at something big, broken, and dangerous, and says, "Go." Voss stood in the dim command room, eyes hollow from nights without sleep, voice steady like steel sharpened on loss. "Cyrex relay node," she said, "dormant. Buried inside a comet drifting through the outer belt. You'll drop in, plant the core disruptor, extract. No evac window if you miss the cycle." That was it. No mention of what the node was transmitting. No mention of why command wanted it erased without trace. But I knew, because that signal wasn't just bouncing through the void. It was bouncing through me. The Iron Company had stopped pretending things were normal. Knox didn't talk much anymore. Just cleaned his blade like it might tell him the future if he polished it long enough. Kai was colder. Professional, precise. Every movement told me she was ready to shoot me if I blinked wrong. And me? Something inside me pulsed when we passed the NAV grid. I could feel the Cyrex signal through the ship's hull. Not words, not sounds, just recognition. The thing growing inside me wasn't asking for permission anymore. It was listening, recording, waiting. As we prepped for launch, Voss pulled me aside. "Cole," she said, "if you feel anything, if you start slipping, I'll tell you." I interrupted. "No," she said. "You'll stop. You won't wait to tell me." She handed me a sealed chip, heavier than it looked. "Final order. If everything fails, this goes in the node's core." "What's on it?" She didn't blink. An ending. We landed on the comet like ants crawling over the corpse of something older than bones. The ice was thick, groaning under our boots, riddled with cracks that whispered if you listened too long. It didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a tomb. We breached the surface with thermite drills, slipping into frozen tunnels like veins. The further we went, the more the ice pulsed with faint green light, like the comet had a heartbeat. And somewhere at the center of it all, the Cyrex relay node, buried like a secret no one wanted to find. We lost the first rookie 10 meters in. 1 second she was there, watching the rear. The next, she was gone, sucked through a fissure in the ice like the world just decided she didn't belong. No scream, just a red mist and silence. Kai said nothing. Knox clenched his jaw so hard I heard a molar crack through the comms. We moved faster after that. The node was waiting. We found it in a chamber so cold, even my augmented suit hissed. Pillars of obsidian tech jutted from the walls like teeth. The relay itself hovered at the center, a perfect black sphere pulsing with internal light. The moment I stepped close, it reacted. And so did I. My vision blurred. My neural implant screamed. My left hand started twitching uncontrollably, fingers moving in Cyrex rhythm, like typing a language I didn't know I knew. Kai raised her rifle. Don't take another step. I forced myself to stop. I'm not connecting, I said. You already are, she whispered. You don't even know it. The sphere pulsed. And suddenly, I wasn't in that room anymore. I was back on Earth, but not the one I remembered. Skies darker, oceans still, cities overgrown and empty. In that moment, I saw their dream. The Cyrex didn't just want to destroy humanity. They wanted to replace us, but not with machines, with something in between, something like me. I snapped back. The team was yelling. The node had begun to power up, its signal slicing through every comm channel, every implant, every thought like a blade. It was trying to call out, to spread, to awaken others. I pulled the chip from my pack. Voss's last order. No hesitation, no time. I jammed it into the core, and everything screamed. Not noise, not sound, emotion. The kind of scream that lives under skin. Ancient and furious and frightened. The node cracked. Lights blinked. Energy flared like a dying sun. The chamber began to collapse around us. We ran. The rookie tripped. Kai grabbed her. Nox covered the rear, unloading round after round into shapes that weren't quite shadows. By the time we reached the surface, the ice was splitting like it was giving birth to something terrible. The shuttle was gone, buried under tons of shattered comet. We climbed, bleeding, gasping. We reached the emergency beacon on a narrow ridge, high above the chaos. Kai sent the signal, and we waited. Snow fell, not flakes, ash. We sat in silence, blood freezing in our armor, eyes locked on the stars. I finally spoke. I could have joined them, I said, back in the hive, back at the node. I could have said yes. Kai didn't look at me. But you didn't. No. I whispered. I didn't. She turned her head slowly, met my eyes. Why not? I thought about it. About Earth. About Sanders. About the feel of Voss's hand on my shoulder when she gave me that chip. And I said, because they forgot something. Yeah? What's that? I looked out into the stars. That we burn brighter when we're about to break. The extraction beacon flashed green. Rescue was coming. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The Cyrex weren't done with me, and I wasn't done with them, because now I understood what I was. Not human, not Cyrex, but the knife between. There's a moment when you realize you're not fighting the enemy anymore. You're fighting the people who used to stand beside you, because they've already decided which side of you scares them most. The shuttle ride back was quiet. No war songs, no debrief chatter, no clanking of boots or tired laughter. Just the hum of engines and the sound of a man trying not to fall apart in a seat too small for what he carried inside. That man was me. The others sat around me, watching, not watching. Kai stared out the viewport like the stars would spell out something she hadn't found in my eyes. Nox leaned forward, elbows on knees, lips tight around words he hadn't decided to say yet. And me? I was listening to the static, because the Cyrex weren't gone. Not really. They never spoke in words. They pulsed, whispered in gaps, lingered in the spaces between heartbeats, and they were still there. The moment we touched down on Ravana, it was clear something had shifted, not in the ship, not in the airlock, in them. The station felt colder, quieter, like the walls were leaning in. Voss met us at the hangar, helmet under her arm, jaw set like concrete. She didn't say welcome back. She didn't say anything at all, just looked at me, eyes unreadable, and I knew. They'd made their decision. There was a tribunal, not a formal one. No robes or gavel, just a circle of command, a long table, and a glowing report filled with redacted paragraphs and phrases like behavioral drift and post-integration contamination. I stood in the center, a ghost being asked to explain its unfinished haunting. Voss finally spoke. You activated the relay. It responded to you. And before you destroyed it, it tried to complete something. She didn't ask a question. She already knew the answer. I shut it down, I said. I made the call. Kai stood in the back, said nothing. Nox sat to her left, face blank. One of the tech officers leaned forward. But what else did it do? That hit harder than it should have, because the truth was, I didn't know. And that terrified them more than anything. After the tribunal, Voss walked with me down the corridor like we were still friends. We weren't. She didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead and said, they voted. Let me guess. I muttered. Quarantine. Not officially. She paused outside the door to my quarters. But you're grounded. No field ops. No unsupervised movement beyond Section 3. And if I don't comply? She didn't blink. You don't come back. That night, I sat in the dark with the lights off and the static humming inside my skull. And then, a spark. A flicker. A voice, not outside, inside. Your fire is not your own. It wasn't a command. It was a reminder of what they'd built inside me, what they still wanted from me, and what I'd stolen from them when I walked away. They hadn't given up. They were just waiting. I found Kai on the training deck. She was drilling solo, sweat slicked, breath sharp, eyes focused on a phantom enemy only she could see. She didn't stop when I entered, just kept swinging, pivoting, striking. "You're not supposed to be here," she said between moves. "They already put me in a cage. Might as well test the bars." She stopped, looked at me. Something cracked in her expression, not fear, resentment. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "About the relay?" The voice. "No. About how close you were to joining them." I took a breath, because that question deserved more than deflection. "I wanted to," I said. She flinched, just barely. "I wanted to say yes, not because I believed them, but because I didn't believe us. Not anymore." She didn't speak, so I kept going. But I didn't. I made the call. I blew the relay. I came back. "And now you want a medal for not becoming a god?" "No," I said. "I want you to remember I'm still bleeding just like you." The room was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said, "You're right. You came back. But I don't know who came back." Later, I found Nox sharpening his blade again. Always the blade. Always the ritual. He handed it to me without a word. "You know how to use it?" I turned it over in my hand. It felt heavier than it should have. "Only if I need to," I said. He nodded. "That's the difference between us. I carry mine because I know I will." He stared at me for a long moment, and then asked, "Do you trust yourself, Cole?" I didn't answer. The next morning, the breach alarms went off. Cyrex's signature, small, fast, penetrated deep into the station's underbelly before anyone could react. Voss ordered lockdown. I was confined to quarters, doors sealed, monitored, but I could feel it. The signal. It wasn't an invasion. It was a rescue. I tore the panel off my wall, rerouted the circuit, slipped into the access ducts. My blood humped. My mind burned. Whatever had come, it was calling me. I found it in the maintenance core, small, shimmering. A Cyrex shard half alive, twitching with pulse code, floating like a seed waiting to land. And the moment I stepped into the chamber, it spoke. "You burned the path, but the spark survives. You are the inheritance, the broken gift." I reached for it, not because I wanted to, because I had to. Then Kai's voice cut through the comms. "Cole, back away." Now, she stood in the doorway, rifle up, heart in her throat. I turned slowly. "I can shut it down," I said, "or wake it up. You know me." "Not anymore." Nox stepped out of the shadows beside her, rifle raised too. I looked at them. My team, my family, the ones I bled for, and the ones now pointing guns at me. I looked at the shard again, flickering, waiting, and then I crushed it, not with tech, not with thought, with my boot. Steel and bone and fury. The scream it made was silent, but I felt it, like killing a piece of myself. I walked past Kai. She didn't lower the rifle, but she didn't pull the trigger. Nox looked at me like he didn't know whether to hug me or put me down, maybe both. And I walked out of that room feeling lighter, but not whole, never whole again. Later that night, Voss called me in. "You made your choice," she said. "You chose us." "I always did." She nodded. "You're not cleared for combat, but you're not in chains either." I paused at the door. "What now?" She looked at me, then said the words I hadn't heard in too long. "We go to war. When the final fight comes, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It only knows if you're willing to burn brighter than the darkness." The last morning dawned cold and quiet. Too quiet. I stared at my reflection in the cracked visor of my helmet, metal fused with flesh. I shadowed by a war I still couldn't shake. The man looking back wasn't the same boy who signed up for this fight. Not the same soldier who believed he could save the world with gunfire and grit. He was something else. Something forged in the crucible of fire and broken promises. Something the Cyrex never expected. Kai was already awake, checking weapons with practiced precision. Her face was calm, but her eyes flickered with the weight of everything unsaid. Nox sat silently beside her, a solid pillar of resolve, the kind that never falters, no matter how shattered the world becomes. We didn't speak much. Words felt useless, like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. Instead, we prepared. The briefing was short. Voss outlined the plan with surgical coldness. The Cyrex flagship, the heart of the invasion, had emerged from the veil. Bigger, deadlier, its tendrils reaching for Earth's colonies. Our mission: infiltrate, destroy. No backup, no mercy. We were the last line. Stepping into the drop bay, the air thick with tension and recycled breath, I felt it. that old familiar spark pulsing beneath my skin. The Cyrex code, the human defiance, tangled in my blood like a live wire. This was the moment it all came down to. The moment to prove I wasn't just a weapon. I was a storm. The ship dropped us onto the Cyrex flagship's surface like sparks from a broken wire. Cold steel, dark corridors, shadows that whispered with ancient malice. Kaidik Point, Nox guarded our rear. We moved like ghosts, silent, deadly, a whisper of humanity fighting to survive in the belly of an alien beast. The first firefight was chaos. Cyrex soldiers, half machine, half nightmare, burst from the walls, their voices a scream of circuitry and rage. We fought tooth and nail. Bullets met alloy. Explosions carved scars in the ship's bones. Kai was a blur of lethal precision. Nox a wall of iron. I was somewhere in between, part human, part something else, part fire. We pushed deeper, into the core, where the command nexus pulsed with unholy light. The Cyrex Queen, an entity both machine and mind, controlling millions of drones with a thought. She turned to us. Her voice, if you could call it that, was a ripple in my mind. You carry the spark, but it will burn out. I gritted my teeth. No, it will ignite. The battle became a storm. I don't remember every shot fired, every wound taken, only that with every breath, I was fighting not just for survival, but for the future, for the legacy of what humanity could be. Kai fell. A flash of movement. A plasma burst too fast to dodge. I caught her before she hit the ground. Her eyes met mine, fierce, unbroken. Finish this, she gasped. I will, I promised. Nox covered our retreat. He held the line with a fury that burned through the corridors like wildfire. We made it to the control chamber, the Queen's heart. I planted the disruptor, hands shaking not from fear, but from the weight of everything. The mission, the betrayal, the hope. The disruptor pulsed. The ship shuddered. The Queen screamed, not with pain, but with rage. Her control faltered. Drones collapsed. Systems failed. The flagship began to die. We ran through collapsing corridors, falling debris, and the burning echoes of war. I carried Kai. She smiled, blood mixing with tears. We die bright, she whispered, and I believed her. We reached the extraction point. The sky was dark, but for the first time in forever, I saw stars. Faint, distant, but real. We made it. Back on Ravana, the silence was different. Not the cold of suspicion, but the calm after the storm. Voss met me in the hall. You did it. I did what I had to. She nodded. And now, I looked at my hands, metal and flesh. Now, we rebuild. We would never be the same. I would never be the same. But in that fractured, burning soul, something remained. The spark, the fire, the human. We died bright. And in that light, we found our way home.